Somewhere in you, right now, there is a memory you've been reading like it's a finished book. Closed cover, final page, nothing left to say about it. And you are about to find out that it was never finished. It was just left on a shelf, mid-chapter, waiting for you to have enough light to keep reading. You know the memory I mean, not the biggest one, necessarily. Sometimes it's the smallest one that runs the whole show. A sentence someone said in passing, a version of yourself you decided was just how you are. A moment you filed under "that's over" so you wouldn't have to look at it again. You built a wall around it and called the wall closure. But a wall isn't an ending. A wall is just a decision to stop reading a page you're still standing on. Here's what nobody tells you about the past. It isn't a museum piece behind glass. It's closer to a working document. And working documents don't get erased when they're revised. They get opened again, reread with new eyes, and rewritten in the places where the first draft was written by someone who didn't have the information you have now. That's not a small distinction. That's the entire difference between a person who keeps repeating their history and a person who keeps refining it. This month carries a particular kind of pressure toward exactly that kind of rereading, and it isn't subtle if you know where to look. Mercury only just finished untangling itself from a long backward pass through Cancer, the sign of memory, home, emotional root systems, and the days right after a planet like that clears its own static tend to work less like a fresh start and more like the quiet after a storm, when you can finally hear what the wind was trying to tell you the whole time. You're not getting a blank page. You're getting clarity on the page that was already written. And layered on top of that, the sky is doing something Leo does better than almost any other sign manages. It's asking you who you actually are underneath who you've been performing. An eclipse moving through Leo this month doesn't erase your story. Eclipses never erase anything, whatever the more dramatic corners of the internet want you to believe. What an eclipse does is turn a light on in a room you'd gotten used to keeping dim. It shows you the furniture that's been there the whole time. Some of it you'll want to keep. Some of it you'll finally understand why it never quite fit the room. So let's talk about the myth you've probably been carrying without knowing you were carrying it. The myth of the clean slate. Somewhere along the way, most of us absorb the idea that healing means deleting, that growth means the old version of the story has to disappear for the new version to be real. It's a tidy idea. It's also not how memory or meaning or people actually work. You don't grow by subtracting your history. You grow by changing your relationship to it, by rereading the same events with a mind that has more context than the mind that first wrote them down. Think about the difference between a scar and a wound. A wound is raw, unprotected, still bleeding into everything around it. A scar is proof the site healed. You can still see exactly where it happened, you just don't relive it every time you touch it. Nobody erases a scar and calls that healing. The mark stays. What changes is what the mark means to you now. That's revision. That's the actual mechanism behind every real transformation you've ever witnessed in yourself or in anyone else. Not deletion, but a rewritten relationship to something that still, technically, happened. Here's the part that tends to surprise people. Revision requires you to actually look at the page again, not relive it. Look at it. There's a real difference between the two, and it's the difference that determines whether this month works for you or feels like it's working against you. Reliving is involuntary. It's the old scene hijacking your nervous system as if it's happening in real time. with none of the distance and none of the choice. Revisiting is something else entirely. Revisiting is deliberate. You choose the moment, you choose how long you stay, and this is the important part. You get to bring who you are now into a room that used to only have who you were then standing in it. That's what's being offered to you right now, whether or not you consciously notice it happening. Some old scene is going to surface. In a conversation, in a dream, in a strange wave of feeling that shows up while you're doing something completely unrelated, like washing a dish or waiting at a red light. When it does, the instinct most people have is to slam the book shut again, the way they always have. I'd ask you to try something different this time. Stay on the page for one more paragraph than you're comfortable with. Not to suffer through it, to actually read it this time with the fuller picture you have now that you didn't have back then. Let me give you a concrete shape for this, because vague spiritual language doesn't help anyone at 11 p.m. when the memory actually shows up. Say the old story is, "I always end up disappointing the people I care about." That sentence probably has a scene attached to it, a specific moment, a specific face, a specific silence in a specific room. For years, that sentence has functioned as a closed conclusion. Case closed, chapter over, moving on. What this stretch of the year is actually inviting you to do is go back to that exact scene and ask one honest question you probably haven't asked yet. What did that moment actually require of the person you were then, given what they knew, what they'd survived, what they had to work with? Not what would the current, more resourced version of you have done. What was actually available to the version of you who was there? Almost always, the answer is smaller and more human than the sentence you built out of it. You weren't a disappointment. You were under-equipped for a moment nobody prepared you for. And you turned that into a permanent character trait, because a permanent character trait was easier to carry than an isolated, forgivable failure. That's not erasing what happened. The moment still happened. What changes is the caption underneath it, and the caption is doing more work in your life than the moment itself ever did. There's an architectural version of this same idea that might land even harder, especially if you're someone who thinks in structure rather than feeling. Picture the old story, not as a page, but as a room in a house you've lived in for years. For a long time, you treated that room the way people treat a room they're ashamed of. Door shut, light off, maybe a chair pushed against it so you don't have to walk past and see inside. That's not living without the room. That's living around it, which takes more energy than you'd ever admit, because your whole daily route through the house has to bend around a space you've decided is off limits. Demolition feels like the obvious answer to a room like that. Tear it out, pretend it was never part of the blueprint, build the rest of the house as if that space simply doesn't exist. It's tempting because demolition is fast and it feels decisive, but houses don't actually work that way, and neither do people. You can't remove a load-bearing wall just because you don't like what happened in that corner of the room. The rest of the structure depends on it more than you realize. Renovation is slower than demolition and far less dramatic to watch, but it's the only version of this that leaves you with a house still standing at the end of it. Renovation means you go back into the room with the lights on. You look at what's actually there instead of the terrifying shape your imagination built around a door you never open. Most of the time, what's actually in the room is smaller and more ordinary than the myth you built to avoid it. Some old furniture that needs replacing, a crack that needs patching, nothing that requires you to burn the house down. You keep the frame. You keep the address. You change what's inside the walls. That's this stretch of the year, structurally speaking. Less about starting over from an empty lot, more about finally being handed the tools and enough natural light to walk back into the one room you've been avoiding. It helps to know you're not doing this renovation with no support. Alongside the eclipse work, there's a slower, older transit currently in motion, the kind of placement that specifically governs how we relate to our oldest wounds, and it's currently moving backward through the sky, which in practice means its focus has turned inward rather than outward. Retrograde motion in a placement like that doesn't mean the wound reopens. It means the healing work that's been happening quietly under the surface finally gets some direct attention, instead of continuing in the background while you were busy with everything else. If an old ache has resurfaced recently with less charge than it used to carry, less crisis, more, that's still here, that's not you regressing. That's the slow, unglamorous, structurally sound kind of healing. The kind that doesn't make for a good highlight reel, but is the only kind that actually holds. Let me give you one more concrete shape, because the first example might not have been the room you needed to walk into. Say the old sentence isn't about disappointing people. Say it's, "Things don't come easily to me." That one usually has a scene too, a specific rejection, a specific comparison, a specific year where everyone around you seemed to be moving and you felt planted. For a long time, that sentence has quietly decided what you apply for, who you let critique your work, how hard you brace before anything good happens, just in case it doesn't. Go back into that room. Ask what was actually true about that season, not the conclusion you built, the facts underneath it. Maybe the truth is, you were early, not behind. Maybe the truth is you were comparing your first attempt to someone else's 15th. Maybe the truth is harder and more specific than the vague sentence you flattened it into. And even that harder truth is more workable than a permanent character flaw, because specific problems have specific solutions, and permanent character flaws don't. This is why the people around you keep noticing something shifting in you before you've said a word about it out loud. You've probably felt this already if you're honest. A conversation lands differently than it used to. An old trigger doesn't quite have its usual grip. A memory that used to arrive with a full-body flinch arrives instead with something closer to a tired, almost affectionate recognition, like running into an old acquaintance you no longer owe anything to. That's not coincidence, and it's not you getting over it in the vague way people throw that phrase around. That's an actual rewrite happening in real time, page by page, mostly while you're asleep or distracted or doing something as ordinary as making coffee. There's a second, quieter shift moving through this same stretch of sky that's worth naming, because it changes the tone of the whole rewrite. The messenger planet that just finished its long, backward loop through Cancer is now moving toward a meeting with the largest planet in the chart, the one associated with perspective, context, and zooming out far enough to see the whole shape of something instead of just the one painful frame you've been staring at. When those two line up, the usual effect isn't new information exactly. It's more like finally getting the wide-angle lens after months of only being able to see the close-up. You've probably had the close-up memorized. What you haven't had, until now, is the room it happened in, the year around it, the version of yourself who was doing their best with what they had. That wider frame is what makes revision possible in the first place. Nobody can rewrite a scene, they can only see 3 inches from their face. There's also a version of this that shows up as your relationship to your own future. Old stories don't just live in the past tense. They quietly write your forecasts too. If the old sentence was, "I always end up disappointing people," it wasn't just interpreting your history. It was drafting your next chapter before you'd even lived it, deciding in advance how the next relationship, the next opportunity, the next hard conversation was going to go. That's the real cost of an unrevised page. It's not just an old wound sitting there passively, it's an editor with bad information, still making decisions about scenes that haven't been written yet. So here's what actually shifts when the rewrite takes hold, and I want to be honest with you that it's rarely dramatic. It's not usually a lightning bolt or a single cathartic breakdown that fixes everything in one sitting, however satisfying that would be to promise you. It tends to look more like small, almost boring moments of choice. You catch yourself mid-sentence, about to say the old line about yourself, and you pause. You notice the flinch arriving, and you let it pass through instead of building a whole identity around it again. You have the conversation you've been avoiding, and it goes fine. Not perfect, just fine. And that ordinary fine quietly overwrites years of catastrophic prediction. None of that makes good cinema. All of it makes a different life. I also want to be honest about what this isn't, because false promises don't serve you, and they don't serve this channel either. This isn't a guarantee that every hard thing resolves neatly this month, or that pain becomes painless, or that you'll wake up one morning fully rewritten with no more work to do. Real revision is ongoing. Writers don't finish a manuscript in one draft, and you're not going to finish yours in one eclipse cycle. What's true is narrower and honestly more useful than a sweeping promise. The conditions for a genuine, clear-eyed second look at an old story are unusually strong right now, and what you do with that window is still entirely your choice. No transit does the reading for you. No eclipse holds the pen on your behalf. The sky can widen the light in the room. Walking into it is still yours to do. That choice is the whole point, actually. Nothing about this rewrites itself without you. The sky can open the book back up, put better light on the page, hand you a sharper pen. None of that means anything if you keep the cover closed out of habit. So if there's one thing worth doing with what you're feeling right now, it's this. Pick one sentence you've been carrying about yourself that you quietly suspect isn't the whole truth anymore. Just one. Sit with it for longer than you normally would. Ask what it actually cost the person who wrote it and what it's costing the person reading it now. You don't have to fix it today. You just have to stop treating it as finished. You'll know the sentence when it surfaces, because it usually comes with a small flinch, a tiny internal wince you've gotten so used to, you barely register it as a reaction anymore. That flinch is information. It's telling you exactly where the unread page is. Most people spend years training themselves to move past that flinch as fast as possible, treating it like an alarm to silence rather than a signal to follow. This month rewards the opposite instinct. When the flinch shows up, slow down instead of speeding past it. Ask it what it's actually protecting. 9 times out of 10, the answer isn't danger. It's an old draft that never got the update. And if you're the kind of person who needs permission before doing any of this, consider this your permission. You're allowed to look back without staying there. You're allowed to reread an old chapter without rewriting your entire identity around it again. You're allowed to hold both things at once, the fact that something happened and the fact that it doesn't get the final word anymore, because it isn't finished. It never was. You're not erasing anything by looking at it again. You're finally giving it an editor who knows more than the person who wrote the first draft ever did. And that editor is you. If this found you at the right moment, tell me in the comments which old sentence you're finally ready to reread. You might be surprised how many people in this comment section are quietly working on the exact same page. And if you want more of this kind of grounded, Real sky, no fear astrology in your feed. Subscribing genuinely helps this reach the people who need to hear it this week, not just today. You get to choose what this chapter says next. Nobody else is holding the pen.